Here a while. I wish I could help. But, like a separate person. Okay, because usually that's like embedded in that, which is okay because it looks better for the meeting, but I got you. I mean, you might want to keep that there because I don't know, is every time you change the slide, is that going to go off?
Got something to say, King?
Thank you. The rules of procedure.
in person. And thanks to all of you for participating originally through our Zoom over the course of a bunch of months. We all become, I think, experts at remote meetings, but now we're back and able to accommodate not only everyone here in the room, at the community room on Henry Johnson Boulevard, but also some of the public who's listening in on Zoom. Special thanks to the planning staff for the technical work, both when we were on Zoom in this evening, where we can bring in the public electronically as well as here. We have with us on Zoom one of our board members, Lisa Gayard. She's up in the upper left-hand corner there, and she could hear us and hear all of the testimony. We also have with us planning staff members, Avi Epstein over here, and Jess Powell, who's doing the technical work. And we have board members here on Al DeSalvo chair, and we have Martin Hull and Christopher Ellis. Also with us is our counsel, Martha Mahoney. And before we begin this meeting, I want to mention that Martha this is her last planning board meeting. She is going off to join the staff of Assemblywoman Pat Fahey, and actually taking on, I think, a lot more responsibility in that she seems to be going to be a multi-headed person over there, being the legislative director, staff director, and community liaison. But Martha has been invaluable in working with us. She's an expert on land use issues, and we're going to really miss you, Martha, and thanks so much for your great service for the time that you were here with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have two parts tonight of the meeting. The first part is a workshop, and the workshop is where we on the planning board will hear about projects that are new, or maybe ones that have been on the agenda before but have some new information to impart. And this is really a conversation between us and the planning staff as they prepare details for the projects that will be coming up in the future for the planning board. So there's no interaction among either the applicants or the public on this. We have only one agenda on the public workshop, and we could start with that before we get into the actual public meeting. So we'll start with the workshop. And this project is a proposal for a construction of about a 75,000 square foot warehouse with 7 loading docks and parking for 75 cars out on the west side of the city off of Corner Road on Corporate Circle.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Brad Glass. I'm the Director of Planning with the city. I'm going to be pretty brief on this case tonight because I know we have a lot of people wanting to speak later on. So what's proposed here, it's a current site, 48 Corporate Circle, proposed to be subdivided to create a new parcel that we known as 38 Corporate Circle, which would accommodate a new 75,000 square foot plus or minus warehouse with loading docks and parking for 75 vehicles. On the adjacent site, currently known as 38 Corporate Circle, houses a 167,000 square foot warehouse with that's essentially overparked right now. So we have a opportunity here to add a new building on the site of an existing parking lot. There are some design complications with respect to our Pine Bush Overlay District, and I'm going to walk the board through those really quickly, just so they're aware. I don't know that any of these are insurmountable, but to advise the applicant and the potential that they may want to look at slightly redesigning their configuration here. Again, the overlay district standards are based around having buildings set forward on the site and away from potentially protected pine bush lands, typically at the rear of the site. In this case, this is in an office park known as Corporate Circle. There aren't any immediately protected adjacent lands, although there is a small strip of independently owned property along Fuller Road. So there are three stipulations in the pine bush overlay that the current site design does not meet. Those are highlighted here on the slide. Again, relating to having the building within 50 feet of the front lot line and away setback a minimum of 150 feet from the rear property line, and also locating the parking areas behind the structure rather than in front of the structure. As you saw on the prior slide with the site design, currently the opposite configuration is proposed. So we're going to suggest, and I believe the applicant has been advised that they take a look and see if there's any alternate configuration they could pursue. However, being that there aren't any immediately adjacent pine bush lands that would be affected by this development, the impetus for meeting these standards and the intent is perhaps not as strong at this site as other sites within the Pine Bush district. Next slide. There are also a number of development standards that this project will need to comply with that aren't indicated or do not comply on the current site plan. I'm not going to go through those individually. Some of them the board is aware of with respect to the requirement for sidewalks along the street frontage, street amenities, street trees, things of that nature. Again, this is an office park development, so the board may want to pursue, given the fact that the remainder of the development is pre-developed, doesn't have sidewalks, waiving some of those standards, but that would have to come as a request from the applicant and be considered by the board. And I think also we're waiting on a landscape plan and a lighting plan from the applicant. So as soon as those are submitted, we expect some of this information to come in and likely be satisfied. We will be referring this application to the Albany Pine Bush Preserve Commission for review, as well as the Albany County Planning Board. We'll probably pursue a meeting with the applicant in the interim and likely won't see this at the next meeting, but perhaps at our September 20th meeting. Happy to answer any questions from the board.
Do we have any questions? And one, in reference to the circulation, you mentioned there's 7 loading docks. Is there a way that they are able to keep that towards the rear so that they actually can bring that up front, closer to the sidewalk?
And that's a good question, Al. There may not be, based upon what I'm looking at here. It looks there are some complications with existing grades towards the kind of the north of the picture there. But we'll have to, kind of pursue that conversation with the applicant, see if it's feasible or not. Otherwise, the board might want to look at a waiver or potentially a variance.
Other questions from the board? Okay, well, we'll be seeing that one in the future meetings. Okay, I will now call the public meeting to order. And I now will want to present to you our rules of procedure. First of all, I would mention that the public, of course, is welcome to speak, but only those who signed up to speak in advance will be allowed to speak, and we do have quite a few speakers today. And this is a rule of all city boards, and we need to adhere to that rule. First, there will be a presentation by the applicant. The applicant will have 10 minutes to make the presentation. The planning board members then will ask questions of the applicant. After that, we will have public comments. The comments from the public are limited to 3 minutes each. Judge Lean will be keeping time, and after 2.5 minutes are gone, she will let you know that you have 30 seconds. We recommend that if you have the same thoughts and ideas as previous speakers, you might want to just say that you agree with the previous speaker or previous speakers, and that'll give you more time to discuss perhaps other ideas you have or concerns you have, so that you can make the most of your 3 minutes. But we also strongly encourage that everybody who is interested, certainly everybody who speaks tonight, also send us comments in writing, a letter or a memo, because it is important that that we on the planning board and the planning staff and the public have a written record, so that anytime that there needs to be an access to those records, it's there for anybody, the public or various city agencies, to review what's been written. We have received some written comments, I think 6 or 7, maybe 8, but we're hoping that all of you will take advantage of that opportunity so that we have a solid record. The public comments, as I mentioned, are limited to 3 minutes, except for common council members, because they represent a larger area. They will be able to speak for 6 minutes. After the public comments, the planning staff will give its recommendations. And then after that, the applicant has 3 minutes to clarify any factual issues or mistakes that might have come up. So that is, those are our rules of procedure, and we will begin. The one item on the agenda tonight is 257 South Pearl Street. The applicant is the Capital City Mission, represented by Hirschberg and Hirschberger, and the proposal is to expand a group living and other uses involving the construction of about 31,000 square foot addition to its present building. And what's under consideration tonight is for the planning board to affirm that we would be the lead agency under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And then also the board would make a determination of the significance of the seeker. Mr. Hirschberg, you have 10 minutes.
Daniel Hirschberg, the firm of Hirschberg and Hirschberg, here today representing the Capital City Rescue Mission. I have a whole presentation of all the slides of the building, but I think maybe I reserve some more time to talk about the topic we're here to talk about tonight, is the seeker determination. The building plan, this shows the addition in a darker color and rehab of existing portions. Up on top, it says the new building points to the right, the existing building to the left, and to join in with the front building, it actually has a little angled piece at the bottom. Next. This is a view looking north along Trinity Place. You can see the proposed building actually halfway down the block. And I have another view looking in from the corner of Trinity and Arch. And that the building is standing there. There would be a building demolished to make space for this building. And this is a view of the existing building from South Pearl and Arch. This is actually what you see if you're standing down on South Pearl Street near the corner of Arch. You're looking at the main facade of Capital City Rescue Mission, goes off to the right, and the secondary facade going down the left down Arch Street. And there's a view from Arch Street which shows essentially there's space back there, and there's a courtyard area in the back. The view of the building on Trinity Place to be demolished is that small 1-bedroom building, or 1-story building. It's It's not historic at all. It was built relatively recently. And there's a view from Arch Street and Trinity Place of, if you stand back, that looks over the site, looking down towards Pearl Street. Next.
Those are the only applicant slides that we have.
I sent you this thing with 20 slides on it. Oh, well.
There'll be other opportunities for you to present.
What's that?
There'll be other opportunities for you to present.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I sent slides that were meant to represent the changes we made to the site. So let me go through some of the changes we made to the site. There was a question about having sufficient street trees and street furniture. We increased the number of street trees and street furniture so it complies with the code. We also show a remote parking lot, which is within a required distance. We're not sure that meets with approval, but we show it. It'd be our goal to develop that as a parking lot to provide other parking spaces. The other changes were, the question was, what was the fourth floor of the building going to be used for? It turns out that it is arranged now that housing for clients, Perry calls them guests. Housing for guests is going to be on the third and fourth floor. So the fourth floor will be occupied by sleeping arrangements. The first and second floor are programmatic. They have offices, they have conference space, they have a whole bunch of items that are needed to maintain the flow of the buildings and for the good of the Capital City Rescue people. I would like to take an opportunity to review. Brad Glass was kind enough to forward to me the draft of the part 2 of the secret determination. I'd like to have an opportunity to speak briefly to that. This part 2.
Just before you get into that, you mentioned the fourth floor is housing for guests, the first and second are programmatic. What's the third floor?
Third floor is housing.
Housing?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I might point out that the result here is the number of clients or guests served by Capital City Rescue Mission doesn't change. What it does is it allows them to sleep on a bed rather than on a floor. Currently, a whole bunch of people, especially when we have a code blue operation, are sleeping on the floor on mats. This gives them more dignity, gives them a place to sleep, gives them some place where they can have for themselves on the third and fourth floor. The second part of the EAF has 18 items on it. Includes impact on land, impact on air quality, impact on water quality, impact on transportation, impact on flooding, a whole bunch of issues on here. It turns out that there were only 2 items that were checked yes. One had to do with the impact on archaeological or historical resources. That was checked yes. And only one item on that was checked for a substantial, moderate to large impact. We point out that we believe that the building was already reviewed by the HRC. We agreed that they were not empowered yet to make an action on it before there was a secret determination by this board. But again, it was well received there, and we had the opinion that they would have approved the building the way it was designed. We had archaeological and historic study done. Found nothing of archaeological interest on the site. That was shared with SHPO. SHPO will not write a no effect letter because we have no state or federal funding involved in us. We only have a local approval. But again, we believe SHPO would share our concern that there is no impact on historical context of this building. It is larger than the other buildings along that facade at Trinity Place, although what we have done is, because the building grades off to the rear, we've taken advantage of that so that we cut down the impact of the taller building. There's only one item on item 10 on page 6 of 10 That's checked moderate to large resource, and that proposed action may occur totally or partially within substantially continuous to our archaeological site. Again, we agree with that. We are substantially contiguous with it. Although I would disagree with the level of items that are raised on the part 3. The only other item that's checked on part 2 out of the 18 items is item 18 on page 10 of 10. And that has only 2 items as moderate or large. The rest are considered small or no impact. And one is the proposed action may create a demand for additional community services, schools, police, and fire. Number one, we don't think we'll have more demand for schools, since the clients or guests here don't have children with them that will go to school, so that we don't think that that's a problem. Fire, again, we're replacing one building with another building. Yes, there's an incremental difference in potential for fire, but this building will be fully sprinkled and have all the alarm system it needs to be for fire suppression purposes. And the second item on here was compatibility with surrounding areas. It was other impacts. We're certainly consistent with our own use of it. We have, the Capital City Rescue Mission has been there for a long time on the corner of Arch and South Pearl. It's expanded over the years. And other facilities actually run by Capital City Rescue Mission or subsidiaries in the area that also have the same goal. They're housing for women and children. And those are similar facilities. So I guess the question of consistency with the neighborhood is a function of what you're consistent with. Certainly consistent with other uses in the immediate area. So basically, we do not believe that this rises to the level of needing a positive declaration and sending it to the environmental impact statement. If you need more explanation of historic purposes, we can employ a historic archaeologist or historic gentleman to come in here and review the site and give us his opinion. And if you're talked about consistently with the neighborhood and the need for additional services, we can expand on that. We do not think this requires the completion of a full environmental impact statement, because 16 of the 18 items, there's no impact on. Normally, there'll be more impact on physical environment, and there are very few impacts on a physical environment. Thank you very much.
In reference to the comments about the archaeological and architectural and historic value, we really only focused on the physical part of that sentence. What about the rest of it that has the impact on the neighborhood and the impact in the immediate area? You left that part out.
Well, the impact on historic, right? The only thing checked on item 10 is or that determined by the commissioner of the New York State ought to be eligible for listing on the state register of historic places. It says nothing about proposed action having any difference on item 10. The other 2 items are mentioned no or small impact. The only one that's mentioned is the consistency with the historic district, and we concur we are, and we believe that it has not been determined that the building that were demolished is eligible for the historic district, the National State Register of Historic Places. If you're talking about item 18, there were issues raised in the comments at the rear on part 3, which talks about the consistency with the neighborhood. And again, we believe the Capital City Rescue Mission has been a good neighbor. They do an awful lot for the area. And I think essentially, we believe it's consistent there. The other items that are mentioned in part 3, below the historic and archaeological easements, are not part of the item that was checked. There was only one item checked, sub-item checked on there. And the other 2 items were labeled small or no impact. So I don't see how they can be the basis for a positive deck finding.
Board members, questions?
probably for Brad or Al.
Wanna bring it?
Yeah, question for procedural. This thing's been on the agenda for so long, I think there might be some confusion to where we actually are in the process. I can go back in at least 18 months and probably read emails on this. So we're at the seeker stage. Are there still have a development plan to review and or reject or approve, correct?
Brad, you wanna, expound on that?
Yeah, I couldn't give you an exact date, but I would say until a good deal into that time period. The fourth floor of this building, for example, was completely blank on the plans. So, you know, it's our opinion that the application hasn't really been fully complete until more recently for consideration of a seeker positive declaration. So, yes, we have been seeing the project for a while, but really, as far as, you know, this process is concerned, we do need to complete the seeker process, and then that would put the board in a position to consider the development plan and conditional use permit. But until the seeker process has been completed, we can't consider action on those applications.
Did we also have to wait for the Historic Resources Commission to pass on that? Because I know that had to be done too, and I guess that was a little bit more recent.
Well, they're in a similar position as this board now, and until a secret determination is made, you know, they can't take any official action. I know they have preliminary reviewed the project, but they're also awaiting the process to be complete.
Further questions? Lenisa, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to comments by the public. And again, we will take comments by the public from the list that you see up there. And again, I remind you, you have 3 minutes, and Jocelyn will let you know when 2.5 minutes are gone. And we will take folks in order. There's also no cross discussion between the members of the community and the applicants at this time. Okay, Zika Saunders. And the little button there, make sure the green light is on for you.
It is. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Zilka Saunders, owner and resident 130 South Pearl Street, also senior attorney for the state of New York. I am a face of South Pearl Street that should continue. I appreciated council's comments, but I can tell you for sure who does not live, reside, or partake in any activities on South Pearl Street would be Mr. Hirschberg. He gave a lot of comments about impacts of the building and how beautiful it's going to be and all the help, but he was real light on details when it came to how it's going to affect this community. And we know it's going to affect this community in a negative way because what's there now, it creates an environment with no quality of life for the people who live there. The narrative has been controlled in the press since about at least April, when there was a Time Union story that was pictures taken at 7 in the morning before the residents have to leave the shelter, talks about the inconvenience of public urination, and not talking about, and that they patronized the mini mart that was on South Pearl Street. It didn't talk about how what they're really patronizing was the open air drug trade that was being run out of the U-Haul that stayed parked in that parking lot. They didn't talk about the drug drops that were taking place on the side of my building that I own, that I captured on my Ring camera. What they didn't talk about was the homeless woman trying to get in my house while I was at work, I presume, to squat, and she walks up to my door with her pulley case. What they didn't talk about is me calling the police about a person having a drug episode fit that I was afraid he was going to die at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. They didn't talk about the people crawling out of my dumpster and it looks like a thriller movie, or when the temperatures were warm in December and you're driving around Trinity Place, right around that area, it was Night of the Living Dead I lived in Newark, New Jersey for 20 years. I have never seen anything like that in my life. I've seen commentary that, oh, they don't do anything. We have ambassadors. I'm sorry, ambassadors from your homeless shelter are patients running the asylum. And if you're saying that they don't do anything, why do you need to send people out to watch? The narrative that is sanitized in the public is a ridiculous, ridiculous misconception. And the only people who believe it are people who don't want to know the truth about what goes on there. Everybody talks about altruism. You want to do good for people, but I notice that everybody wants to do good for people as long as it stops at the borders of their own community. Because I know Mr. Hirschberg would not come and tell you that that mission does good and that it's consistent with the environment there, because that's what they do. It's reminiscent of the Godfather movie when the 5 families got together and they say, we don't want it in my neighborhood, we'll keep it in my city, we'll keep it in the dark neighborhoods. They're animals anyway, so let them lose their soul. That's what this is. You think we don't have a voice, and you're dumping not just people from city of Albany or the county of Albany. They are coming from everywhere. These homeless people are from Rensselaer County, Saratoga, Schenectady, Pennsylvania, New York City, and you're dumping them. City Mission's real effort is to turn this into a skid row. It's not altruism. It's big business for them at the expense of the people who live there. And we're telling you, this needs to be a community impact study if you've even considered it to this point. It is a ridiculous proposition, and you are, I'm sorry, you're taking tax money from the city of Albany, because viable businesses could come there and make a go of it if that city mission wasn't there, deteriorating the neighborhood. Thank you.
Allison Hart. Allison Hart. Okay, Ms. Hart is on Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, Zika, for your comments, and thanks to the planning board for your work. My name is Allison Hart. I live at 60 Phillips Street in Albany, just about a 5-minute walk from the mission. My daughter is a rising first grader at Giffen Elementary School, which is catty corner to the mission. And I echo what we've already heard. Unfortunately, the South End is a place that I live in and love and call home, and have called home for 7 years. And I get to see the best of the South End, but I also see the worst, and the worst is very visible. I drive through the South End and walk through the South End daily, and it is impossible to do that without encountering panhandlers, homeless people, addicted people, lots of public urination, and lots of really unsafe activities. As a parent of a rising first grader and as a community member to a school, I just want to say these are our children. I was so proud when Giffen started its year with a parade, because inside that school are amazing people, amazing teachers who are doing everything in their power to give the best to our children. But when they walk outside that school this coming year for that parade, all I want for those kids is to be able to see other adults who are thriving, who are working, who are caring for them. And unfortunately, they're not going to see that. They're just not, because there are too many people who are homeless and addicted that are going to be there instead. And who knows what it is they're going to see. I just want to make sure that everyone on the planning board understands that it's not just the city mission. on Grand Street, there's the Charles Lawanga Center, a 19-bed emergency shelter for men, 0.3 miles from Giffen Elementary, no more than a 5-minute walk. And then we have the Salvation Army Hold Mill Shelter and Equinox Youth Shelter, 0.2 miles from Giffen Elementary, 3-minute walk. And then, of course, Capital City Rescue Mission, 0.1 miles from Giffen Elementary School, less than a block away. These services, as the speaker before me, Zika, said, they are concentrated in this area. I think people think that no one's going to care if we just let this be a Skid Row and the place where we can, dump everybody who is down and out. It's not okay. It's not fair. And it's definitely not fair for our children, our youngest, most vulnerable citizens of this town. We cannot let them grow up surrounded by this. It's not okay for my kid, and it's not okay for my neighbor's kid. It's not okay for the South End. It's not okay for Albany. The rest of the county and the city needs to do their fair share. And we can't let the mission expand. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Merman. Roger Merman.
Yes, yes, I am. Well,
Make sure you put your light on there on the,
green.
got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to assert that the Capital City Rescue Mission is incorporated as a church under the Religious Corporations Law of the state of New York. And it has rights guaranteed by the First Amendment and the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act to freely practice its religion. And I can submit, and I would like to submit a written piece that elaborates on a lot of what I'm going to say. Among those practices are many free goods and services that are shared with every member of the community. Mr. Hirschberg touched on a lot of issues that pertain to the POSDEC that you will be considering. I want to talk about one apparent misunderstanding about the rescue mission. The misunderstanding indicates that every morning all the residents of the rescue mission are discharged out onto the street. That is incorrect. That is false. That does not happen. And the written piece I would like to leave with you provides text to substantiate that assertion. Another element that seems to be quite popular is that the Capital City Rescue Mission is the great Satan, responsible for all the ills of the South End. I would like to point out some things that you all may not know. Since the year 2000, the mission has demonstrated its commitment to the South End, not only by providing free services that will be identified in the written material I'd like to leave with you, but also by investing $12.7 million in the community in order to purchase, rehabilitate buildings that would otherwise have gone derelict. I think that may be either the largest non-governmental investment in the South End, or maybe the highest non-governmental investment in the South End. I think those are facts that need to be weighed here. The business of the mission is to help people, not to hurt people, and that's what it's been doing for the 22 years it's occupied the site and for the many more years it's been in existence.
Mr. Merman,
Yes,
you didn't mention where you were from. Are you, your address?
East Greenbush.
East Greenbush.
No close discussion, thank you. I'm glad you're from East Greenbush, but can you leave us the written document?
I can leave it in hard copy or send it by email.
I'm not, now I'm not, a couple more. Do you work at the rescue
For
mission?
45 years, I've volunteered and been a supporter of the rescue mission.
Excellent. And you mentioned $12.2 million over 22 years?
4.7,
12.7?
yes.
I'm assuming, or should I assume that that was maybe grant monies and city monies that came in there? You said that was private
Every
investment?
penny that the mission spent is from donations from the Christian community around the Capital District, not only East Greenbush.
Would you like to have it sent email? So comments?
Please.
Yeah, send it email, thanks. David Poach.
Members of the board, members of the community, thank you for the opportunity to address the board. My name is David Poach. I live at 95 Trinity Place, Albany, New York. And I am here to speak on behalf of myself and thousands of individuals who came off the streets after countless times of suffering with addiction and loss. And the Capital City Rescue Mission saved my life 17 years ago. I graduated their program along with thousands of other men and women who are now living and working in Albany, paying taxes in the city that the mission supported these individuals. So I am just one of thousands. When I graduated the program, I worked the front desk. I worked at the intake department, admissions department, and now I'm the chief of staff. In the intake department, all the guests have an opportunity for services, whether it's drug, alcohol, veteran services, mental health services, housing, education, GED, okay? And I echo Mr. Merman's thoughts that the mission is open 24/7, 365. It never closes. At 7 a.m. after breakfast, we have a beautiful day room, TV, lounge area. The guests are more than welcome to stay inside. As a mission, we encourage programs, we encourage counseling, education, but we are not a prison. We cannot force individuals to stay inside our building. The other thing is, every night during roll call, we make announcements. And we always make announcements saying, please do not loiter within 3 blocks of the mission. Please go and do your business, whether it's going to social services, going to see jobs. We cannot tell people what to do on the sidewalk. We have no authority, okay? But we try to be good stewards over that. I want you to know that 90% of our frontline staff came off the streets, graduated the program, and are now working, and some of these individuals have been there longer than I have. We've had individuals that have 24 years as a senior RA supervisor working the day shift, who's also a veteran, who's our veteran advocate for the veterans that come in. Every day, the mission provides services which includes 800 meals per day for the community as well as our guests. 2,000 pounds of food are given away each week to our community. Our free clinic provides free medical treatment and medicine to almost 40 folks every clinic day. I can go on with the services that the mission provides, but I just want you, as the board, to consider voting in favor of this expansion project. Thank you for my time.
Okay, and can you submit your written comments?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Beverly McMillan? Beverly McMillan? Okay, if Ms. McMillan shows up later, unless is she on Zoom?
She's not.
Okay. If she shows up a little bit later, we can go back. Barry Blennis.
Thank you for the opportunity. I went to college in Albany. I've worked in Albany all those years since college, and I went to college in 1962. I don't live in the city of Albany, but I feel like I know the city of Albany better than the community I live in because I know more people here, because I've been here all these years. I'm currently the president of the Capital City Rescue Mission Board. Been on that board for about 41 years. But I'd like to say that there are, and I don't want to pontificate things that other people have said, but there's about 14,000 people in the city of Albany that contribute to the Capital City Rescue Mission on a regular basis. That's support. They may not all be from the South End, but they're from the city of Albany. The roughly 100,000 people who live in the city of Albany. 14,000 of those people support the city mission. Okay, and that I think is significant. And a lot of the things that people claim the city mission, you know, every homeless person, everyone walking around any part of the city of Albany is not necessarily associated with the mission, okay? But that's not something that's easy to prove. We're not out to prove it. We're just saying that we are a compassionate group of people who want to help other people. And that's one of our avenues to try to do that. And we just appreciate any consideration that you can give us in following through on it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Tom McPheeters? Okay, Mr. McPheeters comes in later, we'll go to him.
Al, this is Glenisa.
Oh,
Yeah, the gentleman who just spoke, who was the president of the board, I do have a question for him.
okay,
Is that okay?
sure.
Or am I out of order?
No, that's okay.
Okay. So I don't remember his name, so my apologies. I'm better with faces than I am with names. But my question is, in listening to some of the sentiments that have been spoken about with the issues in the community regarding some of the patrons of the city mission, as the president of the board, have you spoken with the community to address these concerns? And if so, like, you know, how recently and what has been the outcome? Have you guys put any programs in place to try to address the concerns of the residents?
Well, we have been on Zoom with the mayor and other agencies. We've had a couple of those meetings. We've been sharing ideas. I talked recently to Carol McLaughlin. In fact, I talked with her today again. So yes, we are looking at that, trying to determine what we can do to help the South End be a better place. And that's really the bottom line of what we're trying to do. But if there's something you think we can do differently or better, we're certainly open to that.
Denise, any other?
No, I just wanted to see like where they were with addressing the community's concerns, possibly outside of this process. You know, just for transparency, I used to live on the South End, and it was about 15, 20 years ago when my daughter was younger, and you know, a lot of the concerns were the concerns then. So that's why I'm asking the question, to see if, you know, if it's the talks are within trying to get this expansion, or have you been working with the community throughout the time period? So he answered my question, so thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Amanda Boyd?
Hello, good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. My name is Amanda Boyd. I am a resident of Albany. I work and hold leadership roles in a number of organizations in the South End, in close proximity to the Capital City Rescue Mission. And for over 5 years now, I've had the privilege to serve children and families at Gifford Memorial Elementary Community School. My office looks out to the corner of South Pearl and Rensselaer Streets. So in my role as community school site coordinator, it is in part my responsibility to implement the community school strategy. And this strategy is built on a structure that identifies schools as a hub, a safe place where children and their families have access to obstacle eliminating resources and supports, so that our students can focus on what should be their main priorities as children, learning. Our school cannot be the hub, that safe place, if families fear traveling to our school building. On a constant basis, our families and children observe drug use, public urination, aggressive behavior, just feet
You're
away from.
fading away, Ms. Boyd.
Okay, let me get closer to my device here. So parents have been forced to reroute their daily.
Connection is not clear.
Oh man. I'm not sure what to change. Is that any better? Can you all hear me? Oh man.
See, I hear her clearly. So I think it may be the PA system there, because I don't have any issues hearing her at all.
So I'm not sure what to do. I've also sent the written statement. So what is recommended that should I keep going because it's being recorded?
We could hear you now much better.
Okay, great. So parents have been forced to reroute their daily walking commutes to school to avoid coming in contact with individuals associated with the Capital City Rescue Mission. Some of our parents have been physically attacked and verbally harassed. On one occasion, even our staff had to step in to interrupt an attempted abduction. Our parents should be able to, from one corner away from our school, with security staff in sight, safely hand off their children without fear of harm or intimidation. And our security staff should not be responsible for combating the preventable dangers outside of our doors that exist due to the negligence of a neighboring organization. While I understand that we cannot counter the argument that all of the violence and loitering and addiction may not directly relate to how the mission operates its shelter, I do feel quite comfortable stating that under these current conditions, we cannot accept any expansion of the mission. Until what's already an extremely difficult situation can be improved, there should not be an opportunity to add to our burden of navigating these circumstances. My concern is that this expansion will not better serve the mission's clients, but only increase the population of folks that are already inadequately served. So I'm strongly in opposition to this expansion. And I hope that the board will take this and the many other positions of opposition into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fred Barr.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, yeah, my name is Fred Borer, and I live on Trinity Place. My spouse and I own a home here, and we've raised our 3 children on Trinity Place, right down the block from the rescue mission. Like Zika and Allison and Amanda, I oppose this application by the rescue mission to expand their building. When we consider the trauma for the students at Giffen Elementary School as they walk past South Pearl Street, they themselves as children and their family members and caretakers, I have a very hard time thinking that this same scenario of such trauma would be acceptable in communities that are mostly white or that are mostly upper middle class. I recognize that there are many good people at the rescue mission who do good work, who are good volunteers and wonderful guests there. However, our city sees that we are in the midst of a homelessness crisis and a housing crisis. And these crises are structural and systemic, and they can only involve a solution which is structural and systemic, which involves the collaboration of many different groups. I'm speaking as a person, as an individual right now, but I'm also involved in some organizations that are involved in assisting people who are low income and who have housing needs. And I'm part of many conversations that people are having in the city about how to address homelessness and how to address affordable housing. And unfortunately, the rescue mission is often not a part of these conversations. It's very rare that representatives from the rescue mission are part of these public conversations about solutions. And it's my hope that the rescue mission, in addition to just providing housing and food and prayer opportunities, that they will also be able to address the needs of their guests, whether we use secular language like human services or social work, or we use Christian terms like works of mercy, that people have needs that need to be met, whether it's someone who's wrestling with mental health issues, someone who's looking for job training, people that are in a variety of circumstances. I think ultimately we need a restorative approach where we take into account the needs not only of the guests of the rescue mission, but we take into account the needs of the students and families of Giffen Elementary, as well as the needs of the neighbors and the South End community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Reverend Solomon Deese. Is he on Zoom? Okay, we'll go on then to Sandra Ruiz. Sandra Ruiz. Okay, Leroy Johnson.
Good evening. I'm Leroy Johnson. I'm a resident of Albany. I'm actually a teacher over at Giffen Elementary School. I teach first grade. Speaking to a few different moments in this meeting, I wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit more about what we as individuals at the school see. So I want to communicate and make sure I elaborate that parents and students that commute to this school must walk by foot and walk through, not past, not by, through this type of chaos every single day, each day. There's too many facilities, reformative facilities that are in close radius of this particular school, which has been here since I want to think the 50s or the 60s. During the winter, it gets a little darker. So without adequate lining around the school's perimeter, it has consistently raised concerns about safety, with the mission patrons becoming increasingly dangerous and bold. I want to remind you about the Times Union article from September 12, 2018, which mentioned how the DMV had a growing concerns about people loitering, drinking alcohol, and engaging in illegal activities near the DMV's South Pearl Street site. Another article from October 3rd, 2018, quoted Republican Commissioner Rachel Bleddy as saying a bad, dangerous neighborhood, which is coming from a place of privilege, considering officials only have to work down here minimally during the pandemic. Whereas the families that have to live among the loitering patrons of the mission weren't able to drive northwest to be away from all of it. I want to elaborate, there's too many people and a lot of people that need these services, but not within close proximity of an elementary school. Mind you, the largest elementary school in Albany City School District. There was a meeting held in 2018 or 2019 with the police chief, fire chief, head of Albany Housing, the rescue mission chairperson, local store owner at the Pearl Street and the Rensselaer corner, discussing a lot of these concerns. In October, there was an individual who got into an altercation with another patron and unfortunately did not survive that encounter. In front of the school, the kids had to witness this. Each day, our maintenance and school safety teams are picking up empty liquor bottles, drug paraphernalia on school grounds, in like the playground area where our kids go during recess. School personnel have caught individuals urinating and defecating on the grounds within sight of classroom windows and students. School personnel have had to daily ask patrons of the mission to remove their presence from the grounds of the school, which is almost always met with belligerence and aggression. The ones that do not meet that same level of criteria are inebriated, unfortunately. 30 seconds. Thank you. Students have constantly been solicited, as mentioned, and attempted to be abducted near the school. Placing the mission near an elementary school that has been there for many decades was a poor decision in itself. Our school does not receive much support from the local police department across the block, much less the fire department across the street. So we're often left to deal with it ourselves. No one can justify sitting here today, admittedly, that any student or student family should have to endure what they are currently experiencing. Tough times comes for all of us, so I advocate the assistance of individuals who most definitely need it. We are part of this community, and I do currently from my room in the school. I'm not even gonna look at the rest of this. I'm gonna just straight up say this. At this given point in time, talking about an expansion of the mission should not be on the table. The concern of our students and our children that live in that community should be. And while there's been people that I've watched being up here, I've watched individuals smile at people speaking up here already, which means that there's certain individuals that are not taking this very seriously, but I'm gonna let you know that I am. And there's people that are behind me that are too. And there's more people that aren't in this room that are too.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Can you leave, or submit?
I'd be more happy to give this to you.
That'd be fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Sean reporter. I'm sorry, Tanya Terry. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, as long as that's on.
The green light is on.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. So I live in the South End. I not only live there, I work there. I do security at Giffen Memorial. It's very challenging for me to think that we're even having this discussion with children as young as 3 and 4 years old coming into that building to go to school. I should be able to watch my babies come to school skipping, and instead they're running. Their parents are trying to guard them. People are asking kids and staff for money. This is just completely unacceptable. And although people need another chance, I'm not sure how that mission got there to begin with the school so close. But it's not just the mission that's our fight. We have mental health in the parking lot across the street. These people are reaching for the doors. They're mentally unstable, not focusing that there's kids there. And these kids are in danger at all times. Like the alcohol abuse, the people urinating, all the things that Mr. Johnson said, that Mrs. Boyd said. These things are really happening. And I guess I just wonder if we'd be having this meeting if that mission was going into the neighborhood where your kid goes to school.
Preach that.
Because that's my problem. I'm born and raised here, and I've never seen anything like this. We have a recovery center on Bassett that's in the backyard where my children are playing. Is there data that shows the people coming to the mission, what their reasoning for being there? Are there pedophiles? Like, where's the data? Everything I know about nowadays, working for the district as long as I have, is everything is data driven. So has anybody produced any data about where these people are coming from actually? What the needs are? And how are we putting needs of adults over children?
Yes, preach that.
And if we expect a community to believe that we have their best interests at heart, you have to start with their children.
Yes.
I walk those grounds every day and I do it alone. And I have to ask several people to leave the front of the building. They can't be there. There's no officer, there's nobody else behind me, just me, looking out for the best interests of these kids at Giffen. And for 6.5 hours, and they have to go outside and play at recess, we have to check the grounds to make sure they can go there. Like when you find bullet casings and glass and condoms and needles and knives. It is insane. I just don't understand how this is even happening. There is at least 6 organizations that help adults. That's gonna be probably their second or third or whatever chance, and we all need another chance. I'm flawed, I make mistakes, right? But these are these kids' first chance at life. This is all disparity for them.
Sorry,
and I just have a hard time with it, and I appreciate it, but I'm against it, and I think it should be opposed.
Preach that, yes.
Thank you. All right, Desharm Porter.
She's not here.
Desharm Porter?
Not here.
Michelle McDowell. on Zoom? Rochelle McDonald? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Pursuant McDowell. Good afternoon to the community. I work over with Tanya also, and plus my church is on the south end, which is Mount Calvary, and our preacher is Reverend Joe Covington. He and I have had long talks and discussions about what's going on around the school. He's a new guy here, but he had to visit our community around the school, and I went upon my inviting him to do so he could get an idea of what goes on around there and heard our conversation. And I see the same things that Tanya see, and I have spoken with him about it to see if he could come up with any solutions or come up with something that we could do as a community to kind of alleviate some of those problems that we're having with our children and the mission. I'm not against the mission. I think that it's well needed, but it's not well needed in our community versus our children. I think our children should come first. There's no one putting too much emphasis on children, especially minority children. I think we're losing sight of what's going on in our community because we want to be a good guy and help other people, which is fine. But you don't stomp your future in order to help your present get along. And this is what I see that's going on. We're having a tough time over at Giffen, especially with the things that are happening there. And we need more people. We need a police presence, which we don't get very much of. We should have a police in there upon dismissal and arrival of our children. We don't get that. What we do get is a lot of rhetoric and a lot of saying, we understand and that we will help. But I think it's an abomination. I think the mayor and the board should take another look at what you're intending to do, because if it's not going to help the community, what we should do when we leave here is start organizing that you will not do anything you want to do in our community. And if we organize, and I come out of the brothers in the 60s, if we organize, we will put a stop to what you're doing.
Yes, preach that, we got your back, yes.
Thank you. Yanni Richardson? James Tucker.
Good evening. I'm a South End resident. I got 60+ years in the South End. And the South End has never been in any worse shape than it's ever been. And most of it is because of the mission. The mission needs to go back to over on Hudson Avenue, where it came from. There's a lot of land over there for you to expand, do whatever you want to do. A whole bunch of land over there for you to do whatever you got to do. That mission, it breeds, it's a magnet for the worst of the worst. It's crazy over there. I'm a 66-year-old man. I'm a 3-time loser. I'm having an internal fight with myself about putting a gun in my pocket because I'm scared over there. And I was a tough guy in the South End, but I'm scared now. It's crazy. It's just insane over there. I got a friend that owns a coffee shop down the street. His business is dead now. The kids walking back and forth, all they see is chaos. At 7 o'clock, when they open the cage and let them out, and they do what they want to do, and you talking about the mission is a good neighbor? No, you're not. That's insane, yo. What's going on is insane. And you know what's going on down there. Because you see it every day. You gotta see it. You can't miss it. All up and down Pearl Street. From from Market Street to Morton Avenue, nobody can use a bus stop.
Yes.
They shooting dope in there, they having sex in there, they're doing all kind of crazy things, and the babies is looking at it.
Yes, and they all from the mission.
You don't even have the decency to go to Gifford and try to be a good neighbor.
Yes.
You need to get together with the police. The police station right around the corner. They won't even come around the corner and clear the bus stops.
Yes, right.
This shit is crazy, yo.
Yes.
I'm a dude from the streets. I understand, and all it draws, all it takes from Albany. Because everybody comes here for the benefit card. They don't talk about that. Perry and them getting rich.
Yes.
Oh, they getting rich.
Business.
It's a business, yo. Big business. Come on with it. Come on with it, yo. And I know you see, you wouldn't let it happen in your neighborhood, yo. It ain't gonna go on in Buckingham Pond.
Yes.
I bet you it ain't gonna go on up there. Every day them kids gotta go through that bullshit.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
And that's what it is, straight bullshit.
Right.
But nobody wanna talk about it. Because in our neighborhood, you always give the South End nothing. The South End is a food, you talk about having this, why don't you put a restaurant in the South End? Why don't you put a supermarket in the South End? You got the goddamn money.
Community center.
That's right. Talk about helping the kids. All the violence that's going on in the South End. You don't want help with that?
Ms. Tucker, your time is up. Thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Should be time up. It should be time up for that mission, yo.
Danielle Hilly?
Have a good day, buddy.
Danielle Hilly?
Yeah, the old man making a sip.
Come on, that's crazy as hell, yo.
Right here.
Blessings.
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Hilly, and I live on Myrtle, just a few blocks away from the city mission. First, I want to say that the community is not against homeless individuals having dignity and safety. That is not the reason for opposing this mission. I would not personally consider the mission a good neighbor. But even if they were a good neighbor, we know that concentrating vulnerable populations is harmful. That's why they're taking down high rises, they're breaking up projects. We already know that this has a negative effect on those communities. So why would we even consider doing this? And we also know that it's not in the best interest of the community at large. Further packing the community is perpetrating systematic oppression of disadvantaged populations. Why would we continue to do that? If we're so woke about harming communities that haven't had a voice, why would we do this now in 2022? Their annual reports posted on their website don't even support the expansion. Based on their own available information, they are currently underutilizing the 2 new buildings. This is compounded by the exclusion of persons in need who do not make a commitment to a church. The South End community is extremely diverse. We are talking about many religions and non-religious people, and many are excluded based on their actual practices. What stops Perry Jones from putting another 100 mats on the floor? Nothing. There's nothing that you can do while approving an expansion that would stop him from packing the building again. Nothing stops him from putting another 100 mats on the floor. And further, I sent you guys a link to a portion of the Mansion Neighborhood Association meeting back in January, where Perry Jones said the reason was for Code Blue, but then admitted that it was not the reason that he needed an expansion. The alcohol availability is also not the problem. It is the lack of evidence-based treatment provided by the mission and their refusal to take responsibility. They are so pretentious that David Poach forgave a company for harming Black and brown members of our community. I echo everything that every other member of my community has said about the school. Please help break the systematic harm that continues to plague disadvantaged communities and deny the request for this expansion. Perry Jones spins a positive narrative about the mission by omitting negative effects on our community. Thank you.
Teresa Rodriguez. Can somebody in the back turn the lights on, right behind, thank you. Someplace, great.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to applaud everyone in their comments and a lot of things that have been said. I currently live at 59 Clinton in the south end of Albany. I'm the owner of 59, 61, 63, and 69 Clinton, 4 and 6 Delaware. I relocated to Albany 4 years ago. Might not be a lot of money to anyone here, but I took all of my life savings to relocate and to come to a community where I saw nothing but opportunity. It's been hard. It's been a long struggle, but it's been disappointing because when I bring my grandchildren to visit me from out of state, because I am a single grandmother of 7, I have to worry about letting them outside to play, or I have to be worried when I want to let them walk to the store because of the activity that's taking place. I'm also a former employee of an organization, and my business was on South Pearl, so I had daily interactions with community members and folks from the mission. The parent of a young man who lives in a homeless shelter, and that's the lifestyle that he chooses. So it's not that I have anything against the homeless shelter, because I believe it does have positive aspects in addition to negativity. But, and I really don't want to focus on all the negative and what's going on, because it's clear as day and it's self-explanatory. The things that I have seen this summer have been increasingly worse from the prior years that I've been here. But the question is, as far as expansion, it just seems like common sense. How are you asking to expand on an issue that you don't have current control over? My first year coming to Albany, immediately sitting in on meetings, the conversations that took place of the changes and the responsibilities that the mission said they would do as far as addressing the loitering issues still haven't been addressed. Promises and conversations and promises and conversations, and nothing has been done. All the issues of the South End behind the mission, I'm sure they're not, but majority of it is. And the issues that have yet to be addressed. These ambassadors that they speak of that were supposed to be hand in hand with police officers patrolling South Pearl, I have yet to see anyone. They were supposed to be vested, they were supposed to be labeled, and they were supposed to be hand in hand with police officers, which is a whole nother conversation, which we don't see either, addressing the issues of no loitering. A couple of comments that I just wanted to note that I heard this evening. The good neighbor comment, I'm not even gonna address that. That there are announcements made daily of suggestions of programming that can be attended. And I'm not understanding, and I didn't really hear anything about any mandatory programming or mandatory expectations, but I've heard those mandatory expectations in other meetings of the folks that have been at the mission, that have graduated and successes, and I applaud that. And I wish it would be more than whatever the percentage is. But the folks that are not participating, are not in programming, are not doing the things that should be done in order to elevate their lives, right? And give them a better dignity and self-esteem. What's being done about the folks that are not participating?
Yes,
And the ones that I do
your time
see,
is up.
my time is up. I didn't get a 30-minute call.
It was a bit soft.
Okay, thank you. And I'm really not in favor of expansion and hoping that something can be rectified.
Thank you, thank you. Marlon Anderson.
Is this online? If you could just announce it, could speak after everybody's done. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we have one person that is online and will be speaking as Tom McFeeters, but that'll be after we finish with all the folks here. So our next one is Marlon Anderson.
I am here. I'm going to be very brief.
I agree with almost all that everybody has spoken in good conscience about denying this expansion, but it is far more than that. It's far more than the South End issue. It's a citywide issue. The mission that you have, as everyone has spoken, we all believe in helping our brothers and things of that nature. We all believe in that. But it's all good to see the premise and not deal with the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is Albany has an out of control homeless problem. And we can't continue to feed into that problem by doing such things as expanding the mission. In fact, we should be looking at shutting down the mission and moving it to another location because it can no longer be controlled and no longer be feasible in that area. Again, whoever gave the approval to open the mission around the corner from an elementary school should be fired from that position. I never understood that decision, that they would put that there where it was. It needs to be moved someplace like the warehouse district, somewhere down over that side of town where there's nothing there. I worked, like a lot of people don't understand, but I worked with programs for over 13 years, providing transportation services for these programs. And this city has never been as out of control with homeless and drug addicted individuals as it is now. I've dealt with the programs directly. So as I said, I'm going to be very brief. The reality of the situation should speak to everybody on the board, not just the commentary that you heard. You all live in this city. You've all seen it. If you've been out for dinner at night, if you've been to a market, if you've just been out walking your dog, the homeless situation is out of control. And to agree to expand the homeless shelter only gives them an acknowledgement to continue what they're doing. Because the shelter is not a shelter anymore, it's a hotel. It's a staging ground. It's a staging ground for them to do what they want to do. And while you don't want to face that, it's the reality of it. I understand the good intentions and it's a wonderful thing, but you have to deal with the reality of the situation. And right now, Albany cannot afford to have an expanded staging ground for what we have going on. Thank you very much. So again, I would say to the board that not only would you deny this expansion, but you would consider closing that place where it's located at and moving it over to the warehouse district where it's away from all the issues that are creating the problems, away from the drugs, away from the children, away from the people, where you can focus on creating the mission that you're doing, which is to elevate these people. Because right now, all you're doing is enabling them to continue to do the next big thing. So it needs to be moved. Move to the warehouse district, deal with the city. We got council people in here, and I know they don't want to see me, but you need to push this out of the city to the warehouse district.
I would just mention, of course, this board does not have the power to suggest any place where they would move. We can't shut them down, but we can deal with the issue of expansion. Okay. Ellen Becker? Ellen Becker?
Marlon.
That was one of them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, okay. Ms. Becker isn't here yet. Dara Gilmore. Dara Gilmore.
Online. Go ahead, Ms. Gilmore.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me have this opportunity to be heard. I live on Catherine Street, which is right around the corner from the shelter. My daughter is the 5th generation South End resident, and she attended Giffen Elementary School. And I purposely have to drive in a different direction and will not walk in that area to expose my daughter to what she would have to see there. I strongly agree with supporting people who need help, but unfortunately the mission is like a cancer. It's a cancer in our neighborhood and in our community. It's a cancer that affects the people that lived here, and the people that work here, the people that donate their money to this entity, the people that are supposed to be receiving services from this entity. It's like a disease that is covering our neighborhood, and the thought that it was going to be expanded was so scary to me that I had to take time out of my day to just express my concerns. And I agree with all my community members and the people of the Giffen School who have said, please do not allow this expansion to exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Hadley. Is Ms. Chadwick online?
Yeah, she's.
You're not here? Okay. Celeste Knight?
Good evening. Excuse me. I actually resonate everything that was said before me from the community, but I have one word for you: despair. A child should not have to wake up every morning and look in the face of despair. No child should, on their way to school, see drug-addicted people, people having sex. The ground shouldn't be littered with needles. If we have laws that say you can't have a liquor store or a bar, or you can't sell drugs within the proximity of a school, then all of those things, they shouldn't have to witness the effects of them either within the proximity of their school. Yes. This city touts equity. You hear equity here, equity there.
Could you pull the microphone closer to you and make sure?
Sure, is that better? Where's the equity in the quality of life of our kids? There's no equity when it comes to their quality of life. Who's fighting for their quality of life? This wouldn't be accepted in any other place in the city of Albany, near any other school. It's not, like they say, not at Buckingham Pond. It's not gonna happen out on New Scotland Avenue, but it's okay for the South End. It's okay for Arbor Hill. It's okay for all of the lower wards. At some point, you need to stand up and say, these kids don't have to look in the face of despair every morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Solange Castillo? She online? Ms. Castillo? Okay, we'll go back to folks who aren't here. Tom McFeeters.
Go ahead, Mr. McPeters.
Hello, this is Tom McFeeters. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're fine.
There's nothing I can add to the incredibly eloquent speakers I've already heard so far, and I'm sure there are more to come. I have reluctantly come to the conclusion that I must agree that the mission really needs to go somewhere else. This is a 30-year mistake. And I submitted some suggestions earlier that had to do with the mission starting to cooperate with the other providers of services for homeless people. That is the Albany County Coalition on Homelessness. It is really shocking that the mission does not work with the other shelters. And there are people in that coalition who are working very hard to address some of the issues that we're all aware of. I live close to Grand Street, not South Pearl, but it's pretty much the same story. The other thing I'd just like to add is that in my work with a village and with the South End Community Collaborative, it has become abundantly clear that the major overriding impediment to development of South Pearl with new businesses and all of the rest and development of the DMV block and so on is the city mission. Nothing is going to happen until this is addressed. So I just want to applaud everybody for coming out and speaking.
Thank you, Bob. Just going to call out the names again to see if there's any other folks that have arrived or are on Zoom. Ms. Ruiz, Ms. Richardson, Mr. Becker, Ms. Chadwick, and Ms. Castillo. Yeah, I don't. Okay, Councilman Derek Johnson. As I mentioned before, council representative, you have 6 minutes to present.
First, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. But this evening, I will be starting off my comments with a letter from Mrs. Jasmine Brown, our building principal.
And could you then submit that to us?
Sure.
Councilman? Thank you.
Good evening. My apologies for not being present this evening, but thank you for the opportunity to express my deepest concerns for the expansion of the Capital City Rescue Mission. When I took the job as principal of Giffen Memorial Elementary, and as a former child who grew up in the South End, I knew the position would be both rewarding and challenging. While some of the challenges our school community has faced just over the last decade cannot be directly tied to the mission, there are a great deal that can. As a leader who serves a marginalized population, it is not my intent to take resources away from another population that needs support. But I am asking that for a change, our children's well-being and safety be the priority when a decision is made about the expansion of the mission, as too often our children have been left to carry the burden of the adults that the mission serves. Just last Friday, July 15th, during a summer school day on Rensselaer Street, my staff was conducting a door and perimeter check, something that I've had to work into our security schedules to ensure the safety of our students due to the amount of occurrences and incidents on and around our school grounds. When a gentleman who was visibly having a medical issue appeared in distress and inebriated, collapsed on the sidewalk, I was alerted by staff and called 911. My nurse came out to assist while we waited for the medical responders to come. We then began to make sure what was happening outside was not visible to our students who were on site in our summer school program. And one may ask, how can you tie that to the mission with all the other things that occur in our neighborhood? He clearly stated to the medical responders that is where he was staying. That was just 2 school days ago. Unfortunately, this is an occurrence that happens far too often and truly impedes our school community from being a safe one for children. Feelings of frustration and anger do not barely begin to scratch the surface of what is felt when thinking about the expansion of the mission. I have seen adults from the mission attempt to lure children with candy, urinate on our building, facing classrooms with children in them, get into altercations during arrival, drink on our stoops during the school day, harass and beg staff for money as they enter and leave the building. And we have called emergency responders to assist individuals more than I stand to count. We have had to pull children off the playground due to loiterers who will not willingly leave when asked. Discuss alternate walking routes for parents to get their children to school, and visibly sweep and clean our grounds every morning so that it's safe for our children to play. And while the mission is our neighbor in the front, do not forget we also have a rehab clinic that neighbors us in the back. It pains me to say there has been days over the last 10 years after dealing with some of these issues that I have closed my office door and cried in anger because of the lack of response, the lack of care, the lack of urgency to prioritize and protect our children. This indifference to what happens in our community tells them that these injustices that happen to them are okay. It is not okay and would not be tolerated in other school communities where children are not Black and brown.
Preach it, preach it.
I was hired not only to educate our children, but first protect them and provide a safe and nurturing environment for them. In that regard, I have failed them. We have failed them, and you will continue to fail them if this expansion is approved. How can a school truly begin to create a safe, nurturing environment for our students when they endure trauma from the residuals from the mission on their walk to school? As stated earlier, we are not against supporting and providing homeless resources to those that need it. However, it is unfathomable that consideration for the mission expansion happens without first addressing the current negative impact it is having on the people of the South End. Choose to put our children first. And just on a personal note, when I walked past the mission, I heard this with my own ears. They play it's a recording that say, you need to get 3 blocks away from the mission. It's instructing them. So some of their instructions are not consistent with what is presented to us on a public basis. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to make it through this letter without, letting the emotions take over, because I've attempted for many years to have a conversation. I brought things to Mr. Jones' attention, and he's in 100% denial of them. It's like he doesn't even receive it. And, also in one of the meetings, I offered it and I extended an invitation for him to come to Giffen and see what we experience. He's never taken us up on that invitation. So, when you say you're a good neighbor, we know good neighbors, because good neighbors listen to their neighbors' concerns and their neighbors' criticisms, whatever. A good neighbor responds and steps it up. And I asked this young lady to come up here because this is one of our Giffen students. That's my daughter. This is a young lady that not only goes to Giffen, but she lives right across the street from Giffen. Yes, I'm her so, the stuff that she has to see, just because she woke up, it's unfortunate that some of the comments that I listened to today is just talking about business. Yes. And when we put business before the people, this is how we got to this point today. Exactly. That we don't, we're talking about a school, we're talking about a community that doesn't have a community center for kids who play on the same streets that felonies are committed on a daily basis. Our community is old better. And I don't think that the mission would have been allowed to enter our city if it was applying for the same application that it was applying for 21 years ago. And so I'm asking that this application be denied, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sam Fine. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Fine.
My name is Sam Fine. I represent part of the South End, including the city mission, and I live on Grand Street. And I've been in a lot of discussions fairly recently with parents, a lot of the parents who have children who go to Giffen Elementary School. And I don't think I can say better what they face on a daily basis than people who spoke so well tonight about what their children are facing. But it's a situation of panhandling, public urination, liquor bottles, drug paraphernalia, children being harassed. A lot of these issues have been talked about. And I think fundamental problem is this, as it's been brought up tonight, this would never be tolerated in a more affluent neighborhood. Every child deserves a safe space, and the children of the South End deserve a safe space when they go to school, just as the children in other neighborhoods in the city do. This mission should have never been allowed to open next to a school, across from a school. I think we all know this wouldn't have ever been approved in a more affluent neighborhood, in a white neighborhood as well. And I think it makes absolutely no sense because of that to expand it. I'm convinced that the mission should move, but at a minimum, we should not be expanding the mission. There is, there's an over concentration already of services in the South End. People talk tonight about how this impacts the area economically. That corridor along South Pearl Street, businesses can't survive, businesses are leaving, and a large part of that is the mission. I want to stress we want to help homeless people. We have a major housing crisis in the city of Albany. We have a major problem with homelessness. But we actually have to do more to lift these people up and to help them. We need, as mentioned earlier, we need the mission to join the Albany County Coalition for Homelessness. Mission has to be part of that conversation. They need to share data with other organizations. We need, and I think we need a real independent body of groups coming together, the mission, other shelters, other homeless services, social services, the county, the city, APD, LEAD needs to come together and come up with a real plan, identifying real funding sources to make a difference, and then in making it happen to actually address the homeless problem, get people out of shelters and into permanent housing, into the supportive housing they need. It doesn't help them to just have them spend the night and get food on South Pearl Street. We need more than that. Thank you. And so, I strongly urge the planning board to reject this proposal by the city mission. We really need to do a lot better in the South End, especially for the children of the South End. Thank you.
Councilman Bellarmine? Councilman Bellarmine? Albany County Council President Corey Ellis?
Come on, take it home.
I don't need to do that. Thank you, everyone. I echo the sentiments of everyone that spoke before myself. The community has spoken, and I think what we've seen from Mr. Jones is the lack of respect for our community. It's the good old boys network. You look at that picture.
Come good out of that.
Those days are gone. Mr. Jones felt he did not need to speak with the community about this expansion, or we would not be sitting here today. If you listen to the community that's around you, if you're a good neighbor, we would not be sitting here today. We're sitting here today because of past sins and past decisions that were made that were poorly made. You cannot support economic development and economic growth in the South End and put a city mission there. You cannot support economic development, economic growth, and have an expansion of a homeless center as well. You cannot do that. You cannot support that and say, I support the growth of the South End. And you cannot say, I support our children and have a city mission expansion. You cannot say you support our children and support a city mission on that corner in the first place. When we look at our community, and I like the letter Councilman Johnson read about Ms. Brown, it is about our children. It is about looking at what other neighborhoods have a city mission 1.1 mile away from school. What does that say? Mr. Salvo asked Mr. Hirschberg about the environmental impact of this expansion. He talked about the building. He did not talk about the environment surrounding the city mission. Mr. DeSalvo was very clear. The environmental impact, he talked about the building. He did not talk about the environmental impact that surrounds the building, what goes on in that neighborhood. And when you talk to the people, you would understand the environmental impact that it has on this community. So when you look at that and you see, that we're sitting here, having to debate whether we're going to expand a homeless shelter that has a negative impact on a community, makes no sense. So I'm here to say I do not support the expansion, and I hope this board does not support the expansion as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Council President.
Charlie McLaughlin?
She's on Zoom. She is here.
Ms. McLaughlin, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me apologize for not being there in person. I'm not in the city. I'm actually away. But as I sat here and listened to the many speakers tonight, what they've said is undeniable. Those are the conditions under which we live in the South End of Albany, and particularly in this area at South Pearl Street and where the mission is located. Undeniable. And the concern that Ms. Brown has for her students, our students at Giffen, again, undeniable. And I applaud her for her tenaciousness in trying to address this issue. As we look at this issue and the children that we're talking about and the parents that are in the room there tonight are concerned about their parents and their future development and any activities that interfere with their educational development, I honor you for being there tonight. I also want to say that in whatever decision is made about this, it is not a decision of just a mere location of a mission. If the county, if the city, the county, and the state does not take up the issue of homelessness at a greater level than it does right now, we're just going to move this problem from one part of the city to another. And I, tonight, as I speak to you, those are the folks that I hope hear what is being said by the parents, the elected officials, and other organizations that are so vital to the South End of Albany. That's what I hope we are hearing as an elected official, as a county leader, as a city leader, as a state leader, and even our federal dollars should be applied to the issue of homelessness, because I will tell you, I believe the mission closes, the mission doesn't expand, those people are going to end up on your doorstep. I've seen them. I live Upper 2nd Avenue. I've seen them up on 2nd Avenue. I've seen them on my street on Grandview Terrace. So I implore those of us who are the powers that be, that have the resources that can be applied to this issue, make it a top priority to deal with homelessness at a greater level than we've been doing. That is what is going to solve this problem in the city of Albany and going to make those children feel safe, make their parents feel safe, and even me feel safe as I walk, work, and interact with county businesses along South Pearl Street, right across the street. I understand what you're saying. We've heard the same thing from people who live with and work for the county right across the street from the mission. So I'm calling upon, as I said, those who have the resources, the decision makers who can address, who can put people in the same room to make decisions about how to address the homeless problem in our city. Thank you. And however this decision goes, I will continue to work with those who will work with me to make sure that that type of interaction takes place so that this issue can be addressed and our children can feel safe, our seniors can feel safe, and anybody who's doing business in the South End can feel like their business is going to thrive and not be threatened by a homeless condition that's in the South End of Albany. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Thank you. Okay. We will now move on to the staff's report.
Mr. Chairman, is it an opportunity for me to be going?
Yeah, after the staff's report is finished.
Good evening again, Director of Planning for the City, Brad Glass. Kind of just wanted to walk forward and some degree the public as to where we are in this process. So we're considering right now the State Environmental Quality Review, and I did just want to make a point of clarification too. With respect to this application and other applications are submitted to the city, and this board is tasked with reviewing them. Certainly, I don't. We didn't put this application before us, and we're certainly not in a position of advocating for additional support services at this location. I would say, based on my experience, the South End of Albany already has the highest concentration of such services within the city of Albany. So I think with respect to the city's equity agenda, that would certainly speak to exploring other locations for this type of project. That said, we are where we are, and this is a type 1 action pursuant to seeker. It is the most likely type of action to have a impact upon the environment, and the planning board has established itself as the lead agency. The other involved agency is the Historic Resources Commission. Historic Resources Commission consented to the planning board acting as lead agency for this application, and therefore my first recommendation would be that the planning board affirm itself as the lead agency for this review. Next slide, please. The planning board is to make a determination, a negative declaration, which would essentially determine that this would not likely have a consequential impact on the environment, and that would conclude the environmental review. The other option would be a positive declaration, which would conclude that the action may have a potential consequential impact on the environment and would require the preparation of an environmental impact statement. Looking at the seeker criteria, there are a few that are relevant to this application, but one in particular that stands out relating to, again, the historic, archaeological, architectural, aesthetic resources that would be impacted, as well as the impact upon community character. So therefore, when we did complete the part 2 and 3 for the environmental assessment form, we did note these 2 potential impacts. I think when Mr. Hirschberg spoke earlier, he seemed to be approaching it as if this were a percentage or that it only meant 2 of 18 potential impacts. How conclusions are made that on any of those various potential consequential impacts, this would create an impact on the environment. An environmental impact statement would be required as a means or course of action. So just to walk the board through what the next steps would be if the board did in fact make a positive declaration, which I would encourage the board to do in this case. The next step would be scoping. That would involve the applicant to submit a draft scope outline of the potential impacts as articulated heretofore and moving forward. We would also seek community impact, and I think one of the reasons that the board accepted testimony tonight was to hear some of those impacts so they could be appropriately addressed in this type of process moving forward. That would be a 60-day process to conclude upon a final draft scope that would inform the specific issues and data that would be considered in the environmental impact statement. The applicant would then supply this board with a draft environmental impact statement addressing those various impacts. The board would seek further testimony, at which point they would assist in the preparation of the final environmental impact statement to assess the overall impact of this project on the environment. I did want to make one more point in the context of this recommendation for a positive declaration. The original application for the mission locating, in fact, there was not an application for the mission to be located at this application, or excuse me, at this location. The initial building permit application to locate the mission at this location was taken to court. It was deemed to be a charitable religious use that did not require review under the zoning code in this particular district. So when this was initially located here, there was no opportunity for this board or any other, frankly, to evaluate the impacts that have been put forth us today. Additionally, with respect to the mission as it currently exists now, it's being put forward as these individuals or there are individuals staying here who are residing on cots on the floor, so that this isn't in fact an expansion, it's an accommodation of existing patrons. I think that there's a concern in that there's no evaluation of that initial expansion, which involved the accommodation of the individuals that the expansion is now sought for. So I do think that based upon the information in the record, this is a more than doubling of the physical size of the mission. And again, I think that there has been a previous expansion that was not put before this board with respect to the additional people that are residing there, that this is now seeking accommodation as if that impact has already been evaluated and exists. And I don't believe that to be the case. And I think that the mission should see this not as adversarial, but as an opportunity to essentially make their case for the expansion through this process of, taking a hard look at what the impacts are and if they in fact can be mitigated and resolved. So again, I think that with respect to the secret process, this certainly qualifies as again, a type 1 action that is most likely to have an impact on the environment. And with respect to the potential impacts, there's more than one impact identified under the environmental assessment form and the secret criteria that would allow the board to move forward with the next step and make a positive determination. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? I have one, and this goes to some of the suggestions that were made by the testimony. With part of looking at a complete environmental impact statement, would part of that be an analysis of the economic cost of closing down the current mission and moving it to a different location, as was suggested by a couple of the people who were making testimony? Would that be part of the assessment? Could that be part of the assessment?
I don't believe so. I mean, the environmental assessment is based upon the action as is proposed. As far as the mission as it exists now, it was legally established, again, not through review of this board, but through a court of law at the time. So the purview of the board with respect to the environmental considerations right now would be on the proposed application as it stands to construct the 4-story expansion on the site adjacent to the current facility.
Also, I had another question. You mentioned that originally the siting here was based on the fact that it was put in as a religious organization, but under the new zoning ordinance, I believe, am I right, this is now really reviewed basically as a group facility? Or maybe I'm using the wrong term.
Yeah, under the prior zoning code, there really was no appropriate classification for group living or shelter style living. It was initially classified as a rooming house and referred for review under that classification, at which point it was taken to court and it was deemed to be in another category that was a permitted use as of right in that district. Under the current zoning code, this is classified as group living other, which is a conditional use, which is something that's evaluated by the planning board on a case-by-case basis.
Questions? Other questions?
I have a question. So, yeah, Brad, I'm trying to understand what you just said. So are you saying to the board that, am I right to assume, let me rephrase my question. Am I right to assume that because of how it was originally deemed to be, or the original way of incorporation of this facility in this area was through court order versus because we really didn't have a way of properly classifying it, that the mission is currently grandfathered in based upon our new zoning? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think more or less the existing facility is, deemed to have an established conditional use due to its location there at the time as a legal permitted use. But any expansion or alteration of that conditional use requires a new review by this board.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So underneath our current laws or our current zoning plan, this type of facility would be deemed a conditional use in this area. or in areas such as the South End, who are classified the way the South End is classified. Am I correct in saying that?
Zoning district and within most zoning districts, correct. And just for an added point of clarification, I guess what I was trying to say was there seems to be a cumulative impact, and this, again, my opinion, a cumulative impact that has built up over time, at which point there's been no real public vetting or opportunity to review and discuss the issues that appear to exist. And that's based upon, again, this having been at least deemed by a court to have been a permitted use when it was established at this location many years ago, before most of us were, before I was here. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I think it is relevant.
No, it definitely is relevant, because there was a question by many of the speakers asking how this was able to come into fruition in this area, especially being so close to a school. That part was very clear. So understanding that it was done through court order and not through any type of zoning board or zoning, application. Well, I wouldn't say application. I don't think that's the right word. But through this process, it's very important. I'm just thinking of where I being that it is a conditional use that seems to have been grandfathered due to it being deemed a permitted use by a judge. But again, like you're saying, any expansion would still be at the purview of this board. Now that we have more information and more data on the impacts of this facility at its current location, I guess my question is there anything we can do to reevaluate this?
I mean, I think that would be a question best posed to our council, and I think it's something
Possibly.
it's quite a complicated question, but I think, again, another reason that the board should move forward with this environmental review. I go back to Ms. Inka Sanders, who was the first speaker. It appears to be light on a lot of details here. I think that the community has certainly had and is aware of some of the impacts that I think that this board and the staff, for that matter, need to learn more about. And I think this would give us the opportunity to ask some of those questions and to hopefully get some answers from the applicant and others that might be involved and associated with not just this application, but again, as Ms. McLaughlin, County Legislator McLaughlin has stated, homelessness is a much larger issue. I think that there are people that are intending to do the right thing in a lot of respects, but it is a pervasive issue in our city. And I think particularly with respect to, our equity agenda, which we've had in place for several years now, we need to take a hard look at how equitably the services are being distributed. And I think that if I were to look at a map now, there is a substantial concentration in the South End. So I think that's a separate issue that's not particularly a qualification for seeker, but it does come over the purview of this board under the conditional use permit and some of the other applications that are before them, and likely, we'll continue to see more of as this issue gets dealt with moving forward. So.
What's her name speaking? Please, can someone tell me the lady that's speaking?
My name is Glenisa Gaylord. I'm a member of the board. Unfortunately, I have COVID, so they're allowing me to come in.
And you stay there, girl.
Yeah, yes. We would want me to stay where I'm at.
What's your name? What's your name again? I gotta put this in my phone.
Yes, my name is Glenisa Gaylord.
How do you spell that?
My first name is spelled Glinnesa. My last name is spelled Gailliard.
Okay, what's your phone number?
Well,
No, I'm serious. What is your phone number?
so is that something I can put public? Is that a public thing, Brad?
It's not, if you want to speak with Ms. Gaillard as far as anything that has to do with this issue or the planning board, you should go through the staff and she can give permission from there.
Mr. Johnson got me.
Okay,
Probably don't want to encourage
I think
we probably don't want to encourage ex parte.
I can agree.
Maybe we don't want to encourage like ex parte communication.
Right. I think, one of the concerns,
What did you say? What did you say? What did you
Oh,
say?
I just, we, like, in typical practice, that we don't encourage ex parte communications just for any kind of application, that the board members, what they review in making a determination should be part of
Okay,
the
Mr.
public
Johnson
record.
said he got me, so I'll leave it like
Okay,
that.
sorry, thank you.
I think one of the things that concerns me, and you had mentioned it also, if any one of the issues concerning the environmental impact statement in review is not met, or during the review, you see it's not met, that could be, I'm sorry, I got it wrong.
Everything's a little backwards with seeker.
If one of the things that would require us to look at this as a type 1 positive declaration would be if any one of the criteria is not met, it could trigger a part 1. And I see that very definitely in how the community is impacted now. The other thing I would be concerned about is something that was mentioned by, I think, the first speaker, and it certainly is true, and that is that the problems that the city faces concerning all of the issues of homelessness are not substantially residents of the city, but they do come in from not only the county, but other counties around, and the city is a magnet for them. This has been shown also concerning some of the issues around the methadone clinic on Central Avenue. So I think that it's really important to look at this in that context as well. That until these other jurisdictions take responsibility for the people who are in that area, and not just every time there's a proposal to put something that would help them in other communities, that they turn down. Other questions?
Call question. Mr. Chairman, aren't I entitled to my?
Yes, I know. I'm still asking the board, Mr. Hirschberg, if the board has any other questions to the staff, you will have your opportunity in a few minutes.
I thought somebody was gonna make a motion.
No, I'm just asking if there are other questions. Okay, apparently not. You have 6 minutes to make any clarifications or rebuttals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although you were exhorted by a significant number of people not to approve the project tonight, that's not your goal tonight. You don't get to approve the project or deny the project tonight. What you get to consider is a neg deck or a pos deck with regard to the environmental review. Capital City Rescue Mission believes the planning board is correct correct body to be the lead agency. Regarding the pos deck, we believe that when you talk about conditions surrounding a building, neighborhood conditions, that would assume that there's something in the code that tells you that you cannot do this if you create a condition. The code allows, on conditional approval, group living other, which is what this building is established as. And that implies that that can be built here. Expansion or not, Perry Jones claims, and I take Perry at his word, that his goal is to provide, please, I didn't interrupt anybody that was speaking before. Please don't interrupt me.
Just keep going, right? Just go ahead.
I take him at his word that he does not intend to increase the daily population there to meet the need. The questions that were raised about homelessness, about activities, go beyond the scope of what the zone, the planning board code allows you, the USDO code allows you to review this basis bond. We contend that the only other rationale was the archaeological one, and we believe that is at best weak. We don't think there's anything that rises this to a major impact on the archaeological or historical resources of this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have two items on to consider here to vote. The first one is to affirm that the planning board is the lead agency for the review of the application pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay. If Chris Ellis, could you complete your sentence?
Certainly.
Sorry, I didn't hear. I thought he was done. My apologies.
All good, sis. Get well soon. I move that we affirm the planning board as the lead agency for the review of application pursuant to secret.
I renew my second.
Thank you. Further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Four, and 0 opposed. The second part of the resolution is that the planning board should issue a positive declaration for type 1 action requiring preparation of an environmental impact statement.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it was moved by Glenisha Guillard and seconded, I believe, by Martin Hall, or by Chris Ellis. Is there further discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Glenisha, you there?
Oh, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay, it passes unanimously 4-0. That concludes our meeting for today. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor for adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to the community for being so patient.
It's good to see you on person.
I know.